changing the world of work for women everywhere. We are Watermark. We're the only nonprofit women's leadership organization that spans all industries. We connect, develop, and advocate for the advancement of women in the workplace. The Watermark community includes senior executives, entrepreneurs, and emerging executives that support you not only at the top of your field, but also on your way up.
So it's really exciting, Catherine, to be here with you. What's really interesting is Sal and Justin, who you are going to meet next from Method Garage, worked with Catherine at Citrix, and I know Sal from the Stanford D School when I did a boot camp, and so that's how you and I got connected.
Yeah,
so it's kind of a nice thread. You know, I really enjoyed your TEDx talk that you did in Kyoto.
Thank you.
And there was this fabulous quote that you gave saying, "Creativity is a birthright, available to all, but used by few." So I really enjoyed that. So what I want to ask you is, what does design thinking even mean? I'm sure some of you are sitting here today asking that question.
Right.
And how did you get introduced to it?
So design thinking, I'm very lucky in that I started my career doing user research. And so we were always doing design thinking, but it never had that name. So when it got that name, I suddenly had this tool and became this buzzword. I had this tool that I could point to go design thinking. And me and my team and my colleagues, we've been doing this for years. And it's really quite simple, simply put, just a problem-solving approach. And what's unique about this problem-solving approach is that it's focused on the customer. It starts by truly understanding who are your customers, who are you developing this product or service for, and before you jump to the idea of what that product or service is, really understand your user community and spend time with them understanding their pain points and unmet needs, and use them to really generate the right product as opposed to developing a product and then having your customers adapt to it. And it means also using your customers throughout the whole process, and that you take things to them very early, prototypes, ideas, you get their feedback, you iterate, you fail fast and quickly, and ultimately when you push something out the door, you've got a higher degree of confidence that it's going to be something that's going to be very successful because you have engaged your customer community throughout the life cycle of the process. So I'm really lucky that it's something that's become a big buzzword. It's the way I think really great products are made. And it's not just done by a user research team. It means your whole team who's working on this product or service is really adopting that philosophy of how you create great products.
That's great. You've also come up with 3 strategies to ignite creativity. So the first one is environments. The second one is experiments. And the third one is storytelling. So when I think about all of this, I'm looking at you. You have a master's in industrial engineering and have led teams of technical people, which we think is very analytical, left brain. So I'm trying to figure out, how did you cultivate that creativity, that right brain, to develop and implement these strategies?
It's interesting. I think part of the problem is we all have the misconception, especially, I work at Google now, a very engineering-centric company, as I have many other engineering-centric companies in the past. And sometimes people have the misconception that creativity means you need to be an artist or a musician or one of these traditional, you need to have a fine arts degree. And what we're really trying to help people understand that's an aspect of creativity, but creativity is really about being open-minded and exposing yourself to new ideas, thinking about the impossible and making it possible. And when you put it in those terms, you think of computer science engineers, they're incredibly creative people. They are creating and crafting things all the time. So it's just finding a language where you can help the people that you work with understand what their role is in creativity.
That's great. Well, I love what you shared, because I often tell people that you become an innovator the minute that you look at a problem through a new lens, or you have the willingness to think differently or challenge the status quo. So when we talk about design thinking, this iterating, failing fast, this sounds like a great idea for a startup, has very little to lose and a lot to gain. But Catherine, you're at Google. You're responsible for $60 billion. That's billion. So how do you embrace these principles when
Yeah.
the stakes are so high.
You're right. Google's an interesting case study because there's the whole spectrum. There are these, moonshot and bet ideas, which are very early foundation, trying to bring crazy ideas to life. Then there's the core business, which is about ads and commerce, which brings in a lot of dollars and revenue for the company and allows them to do all these other cool things. So how you ideate and how you're creative tends to vary across those different product areas. But there are some core things that are the same. It's really understanding who your customers are, who are you designing for. And in the case of a group like ads and commerce, and many of you may work in large established companies, again, where the tendency can be to be very conservative because you don't want to rock the boat, you have to figure out the right way to fail. And what I mean by that is you fail through these little micro experiments that you can do and little tiny tests so you can assess whether your idea is going to move the needle forward without disrupting the business. I always say the worst kind of failure is that you go away and work on something for 6 months or a year and then you do this grand reveal, which is a giant failure. Nobody wants that. But for example, at Google, we can try some designs, put them out to a subset of our population, and if they fail, it doesn't matter. We're only impacting a very small subset of the population. You can then iterate and try something new, and recognizing that you do those experiments and you let failure be part of the process. You never expect to get it right the first time. You do as much as you can to try and get it right before you go live, but you do these little experiments so you go, you know what, it's okay, we're not going to disrupt the business. And by keeping doing the experiments, even if 10 fail but 1 is great, well, that's fantastic.
And I remember you were saying something that really made an impact to me was when you have millions of customers, even just testing with thousands is a great way to do it. And for some of us in smaller companies, 1,000 sounds like a lot, but at Google you can afford to do that.
We do have the luxury of a big customer base, so that helps for sure.
And so sort of also, what you said, my experience of developing consumer products, my very early failures had to do when I made assumptions. Assumptions about what the customer wanted.
Yep.
And I've learned dearly from that. And so today, it's really about developing those prototypes and, getting them out to the end user and gathering their feedback before you produce it. And I think for me, that's been, a really great learning experience.
I think especially for anybody who's here local in Silicon Valley, we are a different population, and we can't assume the things that we like, want, know how to use, because we'll often say, I'm the user, well, I'd use that. Well, that doesn't mean it's going to be broadly applicable. So it's very dangerous here, especially to put ourselves in the user's shoes and project and assume everyone's going to have the same, values, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about design thinking, it sounds so simple. Yet in practice, it's really a discipline in the way we look and see things, and then how we use and interpret that information. So tell us what aha moments you've had with design thinking.
Yeah, we were just talking about one early, funny enough, chatting. Every time I go out with customers, it amazes me. I mean, I've been living here in Silicon Valley doing this kind of work for 17 years, and still, every time I go out and visit with customers, I learn something new. It never, you always are confident, no, I've seen it all, and you learn something every single time. And I was telling the story of when I was earlier in my career and working at Salesforce, and we just launched the support product, which had cases. So somebody calls in with a support issue, and it's considered a case. And we were really proud of this new escalation feature that we'd created. If the case can't be solved, it needs to be escalated to a manager or a tier 2 support person. We'd done these focus groups, and everyone was like, yes, we use escalation. Escalation is a core part of our process. We were all patting ourselves on the back going, this is awesome, people are using the feature. And then I had follow-on field studies planned. I went out in the field and I said, so, you guys told me you're using that escalation. Well, show me real time, how you're using it. And she had this stack of red Post-it notes. She was like, oh, escalation, that's when we use the pink Post-it notes. And I write, Dear Sue, Bob from, Company X has called, and I stick it on her monitor. And I thought, oh my God, we thought they were using our escalation. This is escalation for them. So it goes, if you don't spend time out in your customer's real environment, you're just missing a lot of aha moments. And, design thinking has never failed to really challenge my thinking about customers and how they use things. So it's such a valuable thing to do.
And we're supporting that practice in your design toolkit. You may have noticed there's a lot of Post-it notes and pens. So that's sort of our low-tech way today of encouraging that.
Yeah, we were laughing. We were saying, I mean, this was a long time ago. This happened probably 10 years ago. Now I'm like, now it actually is an effective strategy because it is a good way to punch through, put a Post-it right on somebody's monitor as opposed to emailing them. So maybe there's something to it.
Exactly. You also were telling me about an aha moment in terms of customer experience. What can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think about the progression of my career since I've been working in user research and design. And, you know, in the early days, you know, when I started, it was very much getting your foot in the door 17 years ago. Design is important. You should care. It really matters, creating a great experience. And you get people to listen. The impact we had was limited. And then we evolved to a place where companies got, no, actually, design is really important. And especially happened with the whole proliferation of devices and people wanting to be able to use anything anywhere and having real say in the choice in terms of the tools and things that they were going to use and expecting the consumer experiences they have, the business experiences to be just as good as those consumer experiences. And when I started to realize there were many cases in the enterprise space where we were creating a phenomenal product or service to offer to our customers, but it was failing. And if we looked at some of those early cases where it was failing, it was because the touch points around that product or service were broken. Maybe support was awful. They couldn't onboard because they called support and support wouldn't answer. Or maybe the download process was really difficult and they couldn't get to it. Or they went to the .com site and they couldn't understand the value proposition. Or even simple things like we would put a barrier and they'd need to fill out a big, long, giant web form before they could get to a tool. So it just made me realize at that point in time that it doesn't matter how good your one product or service is, if you don't address all the touch points that a customer has, everything from your brand and how that resonates through exploring a product or service, trying, picking up the phone and calling somebody, what happens when I need to pay and that goes wrong. You need to think about all those touch points. And in my case, when I had the opportunity to do more customer experience work and was handed that role, I didn't own most of those functions. So then you're responsible for really working in this complex matrix world of saying, well, it's part of my job to build these relationships across the ecosystem and make sure that as a company we're stepping back and are really accountable for the whole experience that customers have. And if you think about the companies that are very, very successful, if you think about some of the brands that you sit there and really like, they tend to be the companies that do that well because they think about all those key touch points, not just the product or service. And I think that's what we all need to strive for when it comes to creating great experiences for our customers that will lead to loyal, long-term invested customers.
So I'm going to add in a question that we hadn't really talked about, but you've worked for some of the most iconic companies here in the Silicon Valley, and now you've been at Google for 7 months, and we were sort of sharing because I've been at Massdrop for about the same amount of time, and you know, 7 months seems like a short amount of time, but when you're at a technology company, it's all about rapid pace. So what is it at Google that's sort of different than, you know, Citrix and Salesforce and the other companies that you've been involved with that you're seeing that's sort of different?
It's interesting. What lured me to the opportunity, I'm a big believer in timing, and I think Google is at a place now, they're a very technology-driven company, have done extremely well because of the great technologies they've delivered, but they're realizing more and more for all of their products that experience is absolutely critical, and the products that are core to their business are, many of these products are used by advertisers and publishers, and maybe they haven't got as much design love as some of the other products like the search engine or Gmail or other these things have received. So there's a huge desire to really invest in innovating and improving those products and moving them forward so that our business users have a really phenomenal experience for me as well. And to me, that's a really great, exciting opportunity. Very complex problems to solve, and you need to figure out a way to try and do it quickly. So it's a great opportunity because product management and engineering, who are key stakeholders, are very excited that we're investing in design and we're putting more behind this. So it's a great time to join, and we're having a ton of fun.
That's great. And it's funny, having been at the conference today, there's so many different threads from each conversation. But someone earlier today mentioned that at Google there's sort of this mandate, and I don't know if it's exactly correct, but 20% of your time is supposed to be focused on innovation. And that person actually wasn't from Google, but asked people in the audience who were from Google, and we've got a table here,
We do.
and sort of validated that. But in terms of the way you look at that 20%, like, is there anything that you spend your time on that helps you stay fresh in terms of the innovation that you're trying to encourage with yourself and your team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll tell you one of the things, which is probably not the answer you would expect, because it's not a technology prod area, but it's diversity. Something I'm really passionate about. I've always been very passionate about. And I think if we're going to create really great products, it requires diverse teams in terms of age, in terms of gender, every facet you can look at, and that's really important to me. I really appreciate that Google is taking a very active approach to address this. We know it's a big problem in technology, and they're happy for me to try and attack it in any way I can. It's not like, oh, here's the program, and you need to have it go through person A, B, and C. It's like, you've got great ideas. Go for it and dig in and try and solve it, whether it's a one-off dinner or an event you might go to, or if it's something larger scale. We had a great conversation in the leadership team with my boss, talking about trying to hire more technical women, and we brainstormed what are some real strategies that we can put in place that we truly think can help this. So it's great in that if there's something you're passionate about, they empower you to go do it. And I really love that about the culture.
Yeah. And that really is, there's a huge issue with companies. I know our company is looking at it in terms of, the number of women we have in the company, or just the overall diversity. And particularly when you get to the product and engineering teams, it seems that it's harder to find those people. Are you finding the same thing? Are you able to find the people you need to sort of build out your teams to create that diversity?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, what did you come up with
Yeah,
that was innovative when you guys had that conversation?
It's, one of the things that I suggested, or that we're actively looking at, is where we send our recruiters. People want to be able to say, oh, Google comes to recruit from our campus. And I said, we should go to the schools, we should create a threshold and go to the schools where we feel that they have got really good numbers in terms of technical graduates. And we're not going to go to the ones where it's 2%. We're going to set the bar and go, you need to be at least at this percent. And that's going to push the schools to really try and deal with this. It's interesting, I did my graduate degree at University of Toronto when they were on site at Google doing an orientation for their new grad students, their new undergraduate students. So there are all these high school students. They're trying to convince them to go to University of Toronto. They've done this pitch on how great the city is, and what the great education and where all the students go. And it was at the end of it that I went up to the president of University of Toronto, came to that meeting, and I said, you didn't mention anything about diversity, and I know Toronto is a really diverse school. What are the diversity numbers like for your CS program, and in particular, what are the number of female grads? And he said, we did quite well last year, 40% female grads of computer science. And I was like, are you kidding me? And you didn't even mention that?
Wow.
Like, that's outstanding. So I immediately called our college recruiter and said, are these guys on our list? Like, these are the schools that we need to go to. We need to stop going to the schools who are not investing in changing this. So it starts earlier in the funnel and who we invest our relationships with, because I think we have a big opportunity to influence those.
And we're looking at that in terms of summer interns, is starting to cultivate those relationships now. And I think that's, for those of you that are leaders in this room who are recruiting those types of roles, a little secret here from Google of how they're going about it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure all of you have the same feeling that I do. How cool is it that your last name is Courage? I mean,
I got lucky. Yeah.
Courage probably means something different to everybody in this room. And I know for myself, courage means walking towards and through my fears. So how do you define courage?
Yeah.
And as a strong woman in leadership, what advice would you give to this audience to be courageous?
Yeah, I love your decision, your definition there as well. To me, I always talk about embracing fear, and I truly mean that. As I have taken each role in my career, each one has terrified me in a different way. I mean, sincerely, I've had the imposter syndrome of I'm not the right person, really, or they want me for this job, and you get there and you're like, I'm so overwhelmed. And you have to realize that everybody has those feelings. And if you take a new opportunity and it scares you, that means it's the right opportunity. It means you're pushing yourself to grow. Somebody offered you the job, so clearly they've got faith in you and they want to back you in your success. So it's to punch through any of those doubts and fears and to know that everyone has got that set of knots in their stomach and just go for it. And remember, you've got a set of people who are always got your back. And to make use of those people. And that's been a key thing that has really motivated me. And I always try to have something on my list that I'm doing that makes me uncomfortable, that's new, that I'm trying, that maybe I haven't learned. So I always encourage people to do that. Always have something that creates discomfort on your list.
Yeah, I really like that. You know, when the days when I'm not uncomfortable, I know I'm not doing enough. And I think it's really important, you know, for those of us, we're in front of the room, but I will say imposter syndrome is real. I suffer from it. I have many friends, we've talked about it. So appreciate you bringing that up, because sometimes if we just hear it in someone else, it allows us to go, okay, I'm not the only one with that feeling. So, well, thank you, Catherine. This has been amazing. And I think, you know, what I want to encourage everyone in this room to do over the next 30 days is to do one thing that stretches you out of your comfort zone so that you can walk courageously towards and through your fears. So thanks, Catherine.
Thank you,
This was
Heather.
great. Okay, so we're going to transition to our next part. So to make it easier for all of you to stretch out of your comfort zone, I'm really thrilled to introduce Saul Gertis and Justin Sachs from Method Garage. They're the co-founders. But before Method Garage, Sal and Justin worked with Catherine as part of the senior leadership team at Citrix. They were leading customer experience and innovation programs. Sal and Justin also worked with the D School on their exec innovation boot camps. And as I mentioned earlier, that is where I met Sal. But before I bring up Sal and Justin, I want to share a quick story with all of you. It's about a custom product that I launched at Massdrop. It was an epic launch in our audiophile community. So this community is a very robust community of enthusiasts. It's over 1 million users. And we noticed a lot of discussion that they were talking about this one headphone, the Sennheiser HD650. Now, this group of people were touting it as the best headphone under $1,000. And they said it was close to perfect and really at the right price point at $350. It would be perfect except for ... So hearing this over and over in the community, our team was really inspired, you know, by this conversation. And it really got us to go out and engage with these end users, to empathize and hear what it was that they were feeling about this headphone. And ultimately what we did was to collaborate and co-design the best version of this headphone. So design in hand, Massdrop went to Sennheiser and worked with them to develop this exact community-designed headphone with a price to performance that was unmatched by anything in the marketplace. So the Massdrop Sennheiser HD6XX debuted at $199 on November 8th at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, like, why are you telling me 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time? Well, I'm telling you that because the moment the clock struck 6, we had a stampede of people from around the world. I mean, so we're talking people in the middle of the night who flooded our website to get this product, literally breaking our website. Our engineers were lifetime patching to get people through the system. And what resulted was we sold 5,000 units, $1 million worth of product in less than 2 hours. Now, what's even more frightening is that if our website didn't break, it would have been 5 minutes. So I know this is a super extreme example of design thinking, And Sal and Justin from Method Garage are going to tell you more about how they help companies understand what customers need and how to work like a scrappy startup. So I give you Sal and Justin.